So, tell us a little bit about your earliest memory of motorsport, and did you have a racing hero growing up?
My earliest memory of racing, I think, came when I was like 7 years old, and my dad and I were at the Champ Car races in Monterey, at Laguna Seca, and it was something that him and I would do kind of every year, and it was a father-son kind of thing that we both really looked forward to and really enjoyed. And the person that I most looked up to, I guess, in that time frame was a guy named Brian Herda, who actually never won a championship, but he was just one of those guys that, for whatever reason, stood out quite a lot to me at my very decisive and competent young age of 7.
When did you first get involved in racing then?
Well, I first drove a go-kart when I was 10, but I mean, I've been watching racing since I was a kid, so.
Cool. What advice would you give anyone thinking of starting a career in motorsport?
That driving the car is such a minimal part of the whole experience, and that if you don't if you don't prepare yourself for that, then it can come as quite a shock in the beginning, because the sport and the thing that you love doing, which is the driving, is something that you don't actually get to do that much, and there's a lot of other things that you have to kind of fight for in order to get the opportunity to do it, and the farther that you move along in racing, the less you actually get to drive, which is not something that you think when you first start out. And so that's a bit disconcerting, but if you can just learn to deal with that, then I think everything else will come not as too big of a surprise.
So far in your career, what's been your best race and why?
I think my best race was probably in 2012 at Silverstone. I started last because for whatever reason I didn't qualify the car, and I think we drove to 4th, 5th, or 4th, whatever. And that was quite special. I mean, because I had driven from the back before in GP3, but to do it in World Series, especially in the race that didn't have any pit stops, was quite a big deal for me. And I think that it turned a lot of people's heads and showed that, I could overcome adversity and stuff, and that's something that I remember very fondly.
Do you have a favourite track that you particularly like for any reasons?
I think my favorite track's Laguna Seca, actually. I mean, it's the track that I learned to drive on, and it's the track that I first got introduced to racing at. Unfortunately, it's very far away from here, but definitely I think it will always remain kind of my favorite track, not only for the layout that it has, but for the history and the place that it is to me specifically.
If you weren't a racing driver, what would you be doing?
Skiing, probably. I mean, yeah.
Why?
Why? Because it to this day remains the one thing that I love to do as much as driving a race car. And it to this day remains probably the only thing I'm good at besides driving a race car. So I would definitely put all my eggs into that basket, I think.
Who's the best driver you've raced against?
Jules Bianchi, who's the current race driver for my Rush F1. What I was able to kind of see him do in a car was very, very special, and I think that he's one of those rare few that no matter what situation he's put in, he's kind of can deliver, and I think he's one of the best drivers in F1.
Away from racing, do you like any other sports? Obviously, bar skiing, including skiing, and if so, who do you support?
I quite like basketball. I don't really know how to play. I mean, I do know how to play. I'm very bad at playing. American football. The team that I support in basketball is probably the Los Angeles Lakers. Get shot for saying that. And then in football, San Francisco 49ers.
Do you do much in your spare time away from the track?
So I'd say my time away from the racetrack is mostly spent at the factory. with the F1 team, either working on simulator correlation to make sure that the sim is as accurate as the cars are in reality, and kind of making sure the data overlays correctly, meeting with the GB2 team, or training. So, I mean, it's definitely not the worst job to have in the world during the week, but considering the factory is about an hour and 45 minutes away from my house, it definitely does take up a full day. And beyond that, it's just enjoy the lovely weather in England.
As a racing driver, you must visit all sorts of places. Anywhere in particular that stuck out for you?
Austin.
No, you can't say that.
Oh. Budapest is probably one of my favorite cities in Europe. Beyond that, I really, really enjoyed Singapore. I think it's a bit... you're always going to enjoy Singapore because it's a night race and it's something different than the norm. But the city itself is very, very cool, and I definitely always look forward to going there.
Cool. And the last one, what are your targets for the season and for the future?
The target has been made pretty clear by everyone this year to win the championship and
GP2 championship.
GP2 championship, and if that happens, then I think it will be a kind of a logical progression to go to an F1 seat. If it doesn't happen, we'll just have to cross that bridge when we get there.